Welcome back to episode 6 of the Missionary Position podcast. I'm Ruth Newlove, and today's episode is called Short Term, Long Game. Let's talk about short-term missions and long-term missions. Missions is more than just a trip. It's God's long game. Real missions isn't glamorous. It's often slow, hidden, and costly. Let's define the two. Short-term is usually 2 years or less. Mission trippers, interns, students, gap year volunteers, and church teams that will visit somewhere that they don't usually live. Long-term are people that plant roots in a different culture, learn the language, integrate, raise families, stay more than 2 years, endure seasons, raise funds, and send back reports to their home culture. The blessing of the short term. When I was a child, my dad was an itinerant evangelist, which means he traveled the world and preached the gospel in different countries. He went on many mission trips and visited many places, and he would come back with rich stories about different places, different lands, and different people, and what God was doing there. I was amazed to hear and very encouraged, and it ignited my wonder and intrigue for the mission field. When I was 14 years old, I've already told you I went on my first mission trip to Kazakhstan, and I was truly amazed. The British missionary Muriel Chad, who was there long-term, taught us about the food, the culture, took us shopping there, taught us about the weather and how to live within the Kazakh people just for that short time we were visiting. I was enriched. I raised money to go on that mission trip and I loved it. Now, I've been a full-time missionary for almost 15 years, and I host and take short-term mission trips. Same world, different game. Short-term missions should birth long-term vision. As a short-term missionary for 2 years or under, your aim should be to bless the people group and the ministry or the mission organization you go to visit, usually by bringing resources, manpower, and outside perspective. It's not about what you can do for them, but what God might do in you. Like going to visit soldiers in a war zone, you bring them supplies, treats from home, ammunition, and encouragement to keep them going. And also from personal experience, you get a real eyewitness account of what's happening on the mission field to get your own understanding of what missionaries do and take home a new understanding of missions today, to get a fresh fire and encouragement, and often take on mantles and be bridges for the long-term missionaries and the awareness of the people back home for what's really going on in the field. Like when David was sent in the Bible to the battle to take his brother's cheese and bread, he ended up taking out Goliath. What a great example of someone just being sent to bring resources and actually brings a victory to the soldiers in the field. So short-term visitors are of the highest importance, and we love to host short-term teams. 2 Timothy 4 verse 9 says, "Timothy, please come as soon as you can. Demas has deserted me because he loves the things of life and has gone to Thessalonica. Crescens has also gone to Galatia, and Titus has gone to Dalmatica. Bring Mark with you when you come, for he will be helpful to me in my ministry. And when you come, be sure to bring the coat I left with Carpus at Troas, and bring my books and especially my papers." This is Paul sending a letter. It's vital for long-term missionaries in discomfort to have people visit from comfortable lifestyles. When crunching the numbers, you could save all the money that you spend on short-term missions, the plane trip, the food, the travel, everything, and forget the trip and compile all the money and send the money so we could push through with ministry. But the reality is, like my husband said in episode 2, missions is holistic, and it's a field where we need support physically, spiritually, emotionally, not just financially. We had a gorgeous couple come for Christmas one year to visit their daughter Emily, who was serving with us for a short-term mission for 3 months. And they brought so much British Christmas food, and at that time we were in a season of exhaustion and spiritual attack. They loved on us and they cooked our Christmas meal. They brought Christmas gifts for our children and cooked a whole British Christmas dinner for us with all the trimmings and ministered to us in such a healing and restful way. We got such peace from their visit with us, and they have supported us until this day, this beautiful couple. This kind of short-term work keeps long-term missionaries going. Plus, it's on short-term missions that lots of people feel the call to serve God long-term in the mission field. Long-term missionaries want short-term visits because, number one, we get exposure. We had a visit from Kuya William, a Filipino British, who invited us when we went back to England to speak at his brother-in-law's Filipino church in England, in Birmingham. We went there and shared about our work here. Now, for 12 years, that Filipino church in England has supported and prayed for us up until this day. That is Filipinos in England supporting English missionaries in the Philippines. Amazing. Number two, hopefully someone who visits will also give up their lives for the Great Commission somewhere or get a fire for the gospel in their home. I shared about Gina in my last episode and spoke to her this week. She was in the airport flying back to her mission field, so please keep her in your prayers. Number three, when short-termers come, they give encouragement and a push for the long-termers to keep going. The energy they bring revitalizes us, but they don't always see the cost behind the scenes. We hosted the Doulos Challenge team for almost 1 month, and they came full of excitement and anticipation. The day before they arrived, Andrew told me, "You have to pray because I don't know how we're going to feed them all." And I told him, "You told OM that we can host a large team, right?" And he said, "Yeah." And I told Andrew, "Then God has to provide for it." The team came and we had an amazing month of mission and ministry and making lifelong connections all over the world. But they didn't know every meal we cooked was more than enough, and it was a miracle. Hospitality is a gift from the Holy Spirit, and it's also God's job to provide for long-term missionaries and short-term missionaries when serving on the field. The weight and joy of a long-term stay. When I would hear long-term missionaries come to England and speak, they seemed like such a faraway people, like their mind and heart was somehow left back on their mission where they served, and they no longer fit into the British society. How true that is. When you do long-term missions, as I shared in the last episode, you must adjust to the culture that you live in so you can successfully fulfill your mission of spreading the gospel. Long-termers have the opportunity to plant deep cultural and relational roots. Not all do, but the opportunity is there. You get to be there every Christmas, funeral, wedding, harvest time, and this builds trust and dependability. This allows you to train people for the field also, to work alongside you and prepare them for a future of working in missions. Relationship over results. Activity isn't fruit. The power of missions lies in relationships, and relationships take time. Being long-term means there's a consistency in discipleship and presence. Lots of people like to do 6 months mission and 6 months back home. But I can say this because I've witnessed it. In this culture, if you do 6 months here, you move things and things grow and it's great. But the 6 months that you're not here, nothing grows. It's just maintenance. And more often, it's more like a going backwards because like with harvesting and planting, if you don't constantly tend to it, the plant begins to suffer and wilt. So if you are long-term for this culture, you must be present. Let us not grow weary of doing good, for in due season we will reap if we do not give up. Galatians 6 verse 9. You cannot reap a harvest in 2 weeks. I mean, you can reap a harvest in 2 weeks as a visitor, but that harvest then needs stacking and drying out in the sun, dehusking and cleaning, and then planting of more seeds. There is a work that takes patience and time to grow, and the needs and longevity in missions is very important. Not just in saving people's lives, being like a pop of fireworks, then going out and leaving. With longevity in missions, you can get a fruit of lives changed over the years and a people trained, also ready to go and join the mission of the Great Commission. It's important for short-termers to value the local believers and long-term workers that you meet. Be humble, listen more than you speak, learn more than you teach. We have hosted people. I've cooked their food, made space for them to minister, and when they leave, I tell Andrew, they didn't ask me one question about me living here. Short-term is essential to get long-termers to stay. Often when short-term teams come, there's a lot of excitement and buzz around them because it's like they're fresh blood, and the long-termers are like old hat. As a long-termer, you live here, but these guys are fresh. Matthew 28:18 is the Great Commission, but the Great Commission isn't a short-term project. It's a lifetime mandate. There can be tension between the two. Short-term and long-term work at different pace. One is a sprint, the other a marathon. We've had people arrive and try to work at the same pace that they do in the UK, and we warn them, take water breaks, go a little slower, be aware of the weather. And they say, no, we're fine, we're used to physical labour. And that may be true, but you're not used to the humidity. It's funny how people don't like to listen. By the time they get to lunch, they feel like they've done a day's work already and they are exhausted due to the heat. We witnessed some of our own people when the Doulos Hope ship came to visit. They get super excited and willing to volunteer for this short-term mission on the trip, but in turn neglect their current ministry on land. Because of the excitement of the fresh blood and the short-term visitors, we have to be able to see clearly in this moment that the ministry work God has given you is unfading and of great importance. And a 2-week visit from some foreign people shouldn't make us in the long term neglect the field God has called us to serve in just to enjoy glory and limelight for a few weeks. Again, motive really matters. So sometimes short term can really disrupt long term work if the motive isn't pure. There is different expectations. You don't need to explain the full details of deep cultural issues to short-termers, but long-term needs an extensive understanding of what's really going on and how the mindsets work in the culture that you're serving in. We had one short-term visitor say, next week we'll start a church at the life group we've been visiting, and we had to kindly share that you're only here one more week. You're going to start a Sunday morning service there and leave, and then who's going to continue it? How will it be funded? Are you going to sustain it and support it when you leave? And this person was silent. You can't build something that needs sustenance as a short-termer unless a long-termer will continue it and be using it for the future. We've had short-term teams come and build things like houses, pig farms, and all amazing things that need sustenance. And those things continue because we sustain them after the short-termers leave. The emotional investment is also a difference. One stays and one leaves. I don't know about you, but I really don't like goodbyes. I get really upset and heartbroken. And it's really hard for my children who live here long term to have people come on short term trips who they learn to love and get connected with, and then they leave after 2 weeks or a month. And my kids always get sad and upset. Long termers really have to face many big feelings because of the coming and going of short term teams. It's an emotional investment. Again, we are praying for people to catch a heart for the ministry and the mission field, but the emotional journey can be really tough. Also for locals, they can experience some kind of relational whiplash. Short-termers arrive filled with love, joy, excitement and kindness, which is beautiful, but leave and rarely see them again, and this can work both ways. The Westerners and the short-termers can go back to your homeland and your own way of life and slowly forget about the indigenous hardships, ways of life, and the lack we endure living on the mission field. This is why it's very important to bridge the gap between both short-term and long-term missions. Both need to honour each other's roles. Short-termers can really desire to understand life from the long-termers' viewpoint and ask how to serve in the ministry, not just assume your role as a preacher or speaker without first asking what the long-termer really needs. Lots of short-terms want to crack eggs with big sticks, and you do want to make the most of the short time you are there, as many short-termers are giving up and sacrificing work time and holiday time, so you do want your time on the mission field to be as effective as possible. As I said a few episodes ago, we host short-termers for their experience, not for us to gain, but for the mindset that we are hosting your team to learn and understand Filipino culture, and to serve here for the time you are here. This I learnt again from Muriel Chad, the British woman in Kazakhstan. Short-termers can really support long-termers in coming to serve, not coming to lead. Come and listen, ask how to help, and the long-termers should assess the gifts and talents of the short-termers and how to facilitate that in scheduled timeframes within the long-termer's schedule, so the long-termer does not get burnt out hosting teams and people with no end and being exhausted and depleted when they leave. It's very important also that the teams leave well. Don't just arrive well. How you leave matters just as much as how you arrive. Are you leaving something behind that continues after you go? Will you commit to praying, giving, and even coming back? Some opportunities we have opened to short-termers are like football ministries, sports events, women's ministries, cooking events, singing training. We opened a barber shop, a store, first aid training, building work, camps, whatever it takes for the short-termer to use their gifts and talents within the culture so they can really experience missionary life. And they get the realization that they too could be missionaries. My brother has come and visited us here many times and for long periods, and he told me, you should take your podcast out of the studio so people can see what your life is really like. And I understand what he's saying. If you want to see my life, you can join our newsletter list, join me on Facebook, Instagram, and also follow Alive on Instagram and Facebook too, our ministry. But God told me to do this podcast to really share a window into my world using my mouth. So I need to be obedient to God. Season 2 will be a little different, but it still won't be a vlog. This is a podcast on my position as a missionary. I understand my brother. He says this because as a short-termer, he has seen the realities of 24/7 sweating, pumping water from a well, dirty kids' faces, and all the unusual tropical Jungle Book culture shocks that would catch your eye. This is just home to me now, but I'm allowing you to see the world through my lens, the lens of Ruth. We are one body in many parts, short-termers and long. We have different roles and the same mission to save a great many people alive. Genesis 50:20. Whether it's a moment or a lifetime, the call goes out, and we must ensure our hearts are in the missionary position. Thank you for listening, and please send questions to our email, themissionarypositionpodcast@gmail.com. See you next time on The Missionary Position.